we're going to talk quickly about who we are, what we're doing at work, and then Jeroen going to do his first part of the presentation, and the second part is going to be my presentations. But we're going to start off with a quick show reel of our work and what we kind of do at Sensu.
Thank you.
So we're a creative agency for biotech, medical, and clean energy, and we basically produce 3D animations, film, interactive websites, and standout brand identities for companies that are in the industry with the biotech and medical industry. And we basically combine and mix everything that's actually possible. So we combine film with animation, we combine the websites with animation, and make everything a whole cohesive story and color and look and feeling. We have different departments throughout the entire team, and we have producers, we have planners, we have project managers who manage different kind of projects. We have 4 animators actually working right now at Sensu. We have website people who actually develop all the websites for us. We have a composer actually who during his daytime actually makes hardcore music, but for us he actually makes very beautiful music, similar in the show reel. So we got a whole mix of different kind of people working together with us. And the way we work as an artist is like we got 4 different artists, and we all do basically different projects all together or individually. So we do a project basically from start to finish all on our own. So we start with the storyboard, we create their whole look and look feel, the camera animation, how everything looks until the editing and the final film. And the interesting about it is that we all have completely different backgrounds. Like we got people from product design, we got people who actually are character animators, we got people who actually way more into illustration, we got people actually from more animated TV shows, and the result is all very interesting and very creative to see. As you can see, this is our basically a couple of examples of the 4 artists that actually work here at Sensu. As you can see, we all do it in our own unique way. So some like actually to go a little bit more realistic, and like the illustrator background who actually likes the more simplistic style, have a little bit more color and shaping like that. So, and it's interesting to see as an artist as well, like how other people are doing and see like, well, this is totally not how I would do it, but it's so amazing to see how someone else actually does it. And to motivate this actually, since we started with some internal projects that we internally call Sensu Labs, but it's now called the Human Blueprint, and it's 4 different episodes talking about how the body basically works. And the challenge for us was to make an episode in a completely different style, and also challenge ourselves to do something we haven't done before. So the video you're actually going to see is all developed in cinema.
Embark on an eclectic journey to uncover the wonders of the human blueprint. From its intricate infrastructure to each tiny particle, our body is a marvel of engineering. Dip into this series of 3D animated shorts and lose yourself in the universe of interconnected systems and functions that shape who we are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Jeroen. He's going to talk about the beauty of neuroscience. And afterwards, I'm going to talk about my experience on starting to work in Cinema 4D after working many, many years in 3D as Max. So Jeroen, place is all yours.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to be talking about the creative process of the beauty of neuroscience, and it's a project for SciSci, and for the people who don't have a medical degree like I do, I'm going to explain it real quickly. It's about they create certain antibodies that bind within your receptors in your neurons. So you have the brain neurons receptors, so it's very small. And with those antibodies, they're able to see which sicknesses within the brain you have. But I can talk the whole day about the complicated science. I can just also show you the project.
The brain is one of the most extraordinary and complicated structures in the universe. It consists of many different cell types, together forming an intricate network. At Synaptic Systems, we engineer highly specific antibodies for neuroscience.
Nice.
Ik denk dat we het lokaal echt moeten laten zien.
Of neuroscience. However, there are moments when this beautiful structure loses its means of protection, due for instance to a leak in the blood-brain barrier. As the system in the brain is compromised, neurons start to get extremely stressed, resulting in inflammatory responses such as microglia activation and immune cell infiltration. To visualize these complex immune responses, we have extended our portfolio with the addition of SciSci HistoSure. You can now answer all your scientific questions through the use of our highly characterized antibodies for neuroscience, immunology, and cancer research. Developed in Göttingen for the benefit of the worldwide scientific community.
So that's the animation. And I'm going to talk about how I came to the creative processes for the look and feel, as well about the histological feel, which I will talk about a little bit later. So because it's science, it's always quite complicated stuff we have to animate. So the first thing that we have to do is understand the science, and that really helps by sitting with the script writer as well as with the client, so we can form a good triangle of communication and everybody understands what people have to do. And then the script writer writes the script and the artist goes over to the storyboarding, so that's for me, my part. And then because it's very scientific, it's also very nice to have a lot of references so you know how it works in the real world. So with creating the story, the script writer writes the script and fuses the art with the science. Then for me, it's what I do is create a storyboard that's mostly descriptive and very objective. That makes me leave a lot of space for more creativity for myself later in the animation process. And once I know what I'm gonna animate, I'll find all the necessary hero assets, so I know I have the right molecules and I know I have the right systems. So as you can see, I needed a mouse brain, I needed some neurons, the blood-brain barrier and some other stuff, so I just have a general idea what kind of components are going to be in the animation. So once I kind of understand the science and I have the models and everything, it's time for the more fun and creative part at my end, at least. I can start looking for inspiration, I can create some mood boards, and I can see which colors and emotions I want to provoke within the animation. So that's really my time to shine then. So I created a mood board, and I found a couple of elements within the mood board very pleasing for my eyes. If you look to the right, you can see the kind of tulip that's fully blue, which I really like how calming it looks, and it gives a lot of satisfaction and a lot of peacefulness. But the middle image at the top, you can see the yellow and orange sparking through the neurons, which I like because it's a bit more magical and playful. And I also liked how the brain is looking on the left side, which is a bit more abstract, which I also tried different techniques for. So Just by creating a simple mood board, I can create some inspiration and start combining some things to try to create some new art. So then it goes to like actually working on it. So there are a couple of challenges. For example, some design solutions like how are we going to show the complicated brain? There are a lot of different ways to visualize something like that. Also, which colors will vibe the best with each other and have the best emotions for the movie. And once I know all that, I can apply it to all the basic scenes I made, so I can see an overall view of how the animation is going to look like. So here you have a little process of my designing for the brain. As you can see in the inspiration for the mood board, I started off with a bit more of an abstract brain, with a lot of colors and a lot of particles. I tried to make it quite magical. The only thing is it becomes so condensed with so much information, you can't really see anymore what is what and which part of the brain is what part. So it was a nice try, but I ended up not succeeding with it. So I thought maybe take a little step back, but still try to have like the sparkles inside the brain, as you can see on the opacity layers, but try different colors so you can still see the different sections of the brain. But yet again, if you look more inside the center of the brain, it becomes very cluttered again. So again, I failed. It's a lot of trial and error. And here I try to do it with more particles as well, some sparkles, but try to make one piece opaque and the rest with a lot of opacity, so your focus is really at one place. But yet again, I still didn't like how the opacity layers started to overlap on each other. It became quite messy, in my opinion, again. So I brought it back to the basics. So I just made one opaque brain and then highlight a part of a brain. You can see it's quite a simple solution, but sometimes you just need to try and experiment different stuff to see what works the best in the end. So when I tried to tackle this animation, I created one scene and I created a lot of different colors to see which parts I liked from it. Also taking inspiration from the mood board. And you can see on the top here, there you can see more the inspiration for the calm colors. I really liked how that made me feel calm, and it's more mystical as well. But if you look at the right top side, you can see there are more brighter colors, and it's a bit more lively and vivid. So while making the different styles, I ended up combining them all by using the blue, the dark blue, to show more the calmness within it, and match it with the yellow, which is a bit more playful and magical, so you have nice contrasting colors. And as you can see, I have here a bigger image for you with the color palette on the next side. It's a good way to test as well if the colors are matching. And as I told, once I was like, okay, this is going somewhere, I applied the colors to all the example scenes and I made a mood board from it just to see if the scenes look a bit alike and if the look and feel is cohesive in the animation. And if I can judge it myself, it worked out quite well, so that part is done and I can start animating it. And actually, the materials is super simple. I love using Maxon noises, and my colleague likes to use textures, so there's an artist difference, to be honest. But I love using the Maxon noises because they're procedural. You can use a lot of different noises, and you can stack noises on top of each other. But I just used a blue Maxon noise into a subsurface scattering. I used another Maxon noise into the bump map and a little bit of displacement. So there's no rocket science going on with the textures. Same goes for the background materials, only I blended it with a yellow material and I animated it again using the Maxon noise. So if you have something in the background, you can see almost like it's sparkling, and with the depth of field, it looks even more magical. So that's a cool and simple trick that really worked. And for the lighting, you can see the camera on the top. I used a lot of light coming from the back. The reason why I use that is because if you have the light coming from the back, it really works well on the subsurface scattering. So I was able to create a fairly basic material, but I could create a lot of detail by adding a harsh light from the back, so the lighting is doing most of the detail. I also used a very low spread, so there's a lot of contrast between what I want lit and what I want dark. So it's a bit more playful and magical. And here you can see, if it's loading, the process of an example scene. Yeah, just so simple lighting, and then later adding a little bit of color correction. I'm not a color genius like Maxon, but it did its job. So then onto a little bit more of a technical part, was creating the histological view. So a histological view is basically a scan of a brain, and you can have a lot of slices within the brain, and the scan can go through all the slices, so you can see all the different parts of the brain. And then, as you can see in the reference image, you get like a carpaccio of the brain. And I wanted to recreate this as realistically as possible. And the way I could do that was using the Voronoi, the fields, and a little bit of X particles. So I started off with downloading a mouse brain, just a simple mesh. I created a matrix with a linear cloning, so I have a lot of point data. And using that point data, I can drive it in a source for the Voronoi fracture, adding the mouse mesh into the Voronoi fracture. Using the point data, as you can see, I can create a lot of small slices of the brain. So now I have the information technically, but now I want to make it pretty and make it presentable. So I create one mesh out of it for just optimization purposes. So using that mesh, I created a X particles emitter and emitted it on top of the mesh. And I emitted all the particles only in the y-axis, because the camera is going from Z. So if the particles go that way, you don't have the slices anymore. It gets a bit blurry. And then I added a little bit of variation, a little bit of turbulence, just to add a little bit of detail. And then using the fields, I was able to create the killing and the spawning of the particles. And I created the camera and put the fields as a child of the camera. So wherever the camera goes in the Z depth, some particles would spawn and some particles would not spawn. And exactly at the focal point of the camera, most of the particles are seen. So it's a very simple but cool setup, in my opinion, to show this. And then you have the end result. So that's how I created the histological view using Cinema 4D. And now we're off to my colleague's presentation. If you have any questions, please wait until the end of the presentation, and we're also at the demo panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I got a quick question. How many of you are actually cinema users? Quite a bunch, perfect. How many of you have some knowledge of 3ds Max? Basically none. We got one. Huzzah. Okay, now I kind of know the level that I need to talk to. Perfect. So I'm in the industry already for 9 years now, and most of the time I've used 3ds Max and V-Ray for my tools. I also used Blackmagic Fusion for compositing for pretty much every project I work on, but we'll discuss that later. And I now work at Sensu now for 4 years, and when I started working at Sensu, I was the only animator there. So it was basically asking me, well, what software do you want to work on? Well, Max, because that's what I work, duh. And that worked out pretty fine. And then another artist worked on, joined us, and he was fantastic. What does he use? Cinema. Well, he does great work in cinema. Let him work in cinema. Fine, that's perfect. We started growing more. Another artist showed up. Well, what do you want to use? Well, we want to use cinema. Perfect. That's great. He shows up. Well, what do you want to use? Well, cinema. That's perfect. Let's go.
Overtaking the company with cinema.
So eventually we came to the point that it became a problem. I mean, if I got sick, no one could do my job. And if they got sick, I couldn't do their job. So the issue became now, obviously it became to the point that, yeah, I had to switch to cinema. Great. Now I had to find the equivalent of everything I knew for the past years and find it in cinema. Also do it in a couple of months because I do have to work on projects, finishing everything off. And now, since there are not many that, Max users are going to make it a little bit more simple. The difference I had to find out were quite different. I knew we were going to use Redshift instead of V-Ray. And between Redshift and V-Ray, there is not much difference now if you start using it. I mean, the same kind of shading is in the same thing. You use area lights in both things, so you can easily now take both renderers with ease. But for Max, it's the easiest way to basically to make anything is the modifiers tab, which for anyone, basically everyone here who doesn't know it, it's basically if you have an object, you can basically stack everything you want to adjust on your object above each other, which is super helpful. It's kind of like playing with Legos. And that's basically everything is per object base. And Cinema doesn't have anything remotely like it. So instead, it has the objects window, where you can adjust everything. So there was a huge difference for me, but it was also kind of freeing, because now instead of really having everything in object based, it was all worlds. Everything was in the world, and basically it allowed you to experiment a little bit with instead of just one object, use the entire scene and playing around with that, and feeling like playing with Legos. The objects window is exactly like that. Putting everything under a null, having this as a giant Lego object, and you can copy and everything, and use that for your film. Worked out great. Layers is also another thing that's completely different. Max has basically layers to stack everything, and you can just turn it off, on, freeze everything so you can't click on it. But Cinema basically has we can do a lot more. You can turn it off, you can turn it on, and even if, like me, if you're a huge compositor, it's perfect because you can turn it off for different kind of render layers if you want to use. So I thought, well, this is great. This makes my life a whole lot easier. And well, no, I'm not a big texture fan because it's just very time consuming. So stuff like triplanar mapping is thankfully it's basically everywhere these days. So it makes my job a whole lot easier. You can use just triplanar mapping and everything. No, it's for simple textures. It already looks fantastic. It makes it so much easier. But something like I used a lot, like the V-Ray distance texture, it's not there. And for those who don't know, V-Ray distance texture is basically a black and white texture from from object A to object B. It's basically, well, what's the distance between those two? Well, Cinema has fields. Makes it so much easier. You got fields, you can put an object in there, say, well, this is the distance between there. Well, great. I can do that as well. Well, now Max calls it fall off, Cinema calls it fresh null, if I say it correctly. And well, particle scattering, well, Cloner does pretty much 90% of all that stuff, so that's perfect. Making organic shapes like cells and making them multiply them, well, volume measure does pretty much everything for you. And since those things are already on the right side of your menu, the first thing you're gonna do is open and see what's gonna happen. And I'm a big fan of making stuff real, which is making everything full with mistakes, even your camera movement, keeping it handheld. Just adding a vibrate tag on everything makes it just move around, makes my life so much easier. I mean, yeah, 3ds Max has it as well, but just putting a tag on everything makes it so easy. So to show you on how I made this progress, I'm going to show you a quick clip of animation I just finished. It's called for tidal vision. It's basically about a molecule that's going to be used to clean out all the pollution out of water and clean out plants of fungi and insects. Let's go. As you can see, the film gave me a lot of challenges. Not only had to match all my animations with the filmed footage that was going to be used, but also had to make a molecule look a little bit more real and still feel like a molecule. But also I had to make some different kinds of pollutants. I had to make a membrane where it could attach to. So this project gave me all kinds of challenges. So the first thing is making the molecule. Lots of times when we get a client, they can deliver us all kinds of different models of molecules, of proteins. And lots of times those models aren't really that nice for geometry. They're full with geometry. You can't really unwrap it. Well, you can, you're going to take a week to make it a little bit nice. And if the client says, well, we don't like it, well, that's a week gone. You can't do that. So that's why I like to work procedurally. Again, I like to work with Legos, just make different kinds of pieces of textures and stack them all together. If the client doesn't like it, well, I can just turn it off. Easy. So what Cinema really improved for my workflow for this is, again, fields, just instead of the view ray distance texture, just since we're working with procedural generated models anyway, I can use those to generate maps for this. And also, during this project, Redshift came with the new jitter node, which I immediately could use for all the pollutants in the water. So this is the model that the client actually delivered to us for the molecule. And it's not that interesting to look. It's just, it's balls and sticks. And it's scientifically accurate, because that's what molecules are, balls and sticks. So the first thing I had to do is make it look a little bit more organic. And because the molecule is actually in water, I had to make it a little bit feel like coral was the thing that we're going for. So use the volume measure to make it a little bit more organic. But the thing is, the client was like, well, all those tiny balls that you actually see, they serve a purpose, because one part of those balls are actually attracting all the pollutants towards the molecule. The molecule is called a chitosan. And when all those pollutants are actually attracted to the molecule, it just goes to it falls down to the surface, and you can just scratch it up, and your water is clean. It's perfect. So I still had to keep all those balls still intact and use those in the animation. So what I used as well is vertex map basically in fields to create a map. So I could see what are the balls, what are the sticks, and use some color variation in my texture for this. So showing the generated shape with the balls beneath that, I created a very simple vertex stack. And as you can see here, you can basically have can change the value of how far you want to make the map look. You can make it a little bit more overall, or make it really sharp. And for me, the most important part was basically differentiate basically the sticks for this. But since the balls were still a really important part of the film, I kept the balls instead of the sticks, because I could just invert the fields for this and not have double geometry, which is unnecessary. So this is the map I actually used then for in my texture. So starting off with the base for the texture, I used the dust deposit texture for all kinds of scratches, the splodges and dust basically. And just putting it down there, it doesn't really look that well. Just Using triplanar mapping, maps it all around, blurs all the edges around, and the mapping looks great. I used ramp throughout for the color as well. Now everything that's black is going to be more brownish. Everything white is going to be more beige. I'm having it a bit more organic feeling for it. I used the Fresnel texture on top of that as well, just to get a little bit more shape differentiation in my texture. As you can see here, then I added the fields mask as well, just to get the all the sticks a different color for this. Used an overlay for this just to have the same color range as the base texture beneath that. And this is then the final texture of the kaitasen. With my overall shading, you can see that I used dust for this, the triplanar mapping, the ramp, Fresnel, and also I used the sponge texture basically for giving a coral look, because now it has all these different kinds of holes in there, and just gives the same feeling for it. For the membrane, I kind of did the same thing. I first started with basically a little digit like this, which I sculpted in Blender. Yes, I use Blender for sculpting because I don't sculpt that much because of my way of working with a procedural way, but I wanted to try it out for this. But yeah, I also know ZBrush, so don't worry. I started with a basic color for the digit for this. Again, used the dust deposits to give it a little bit color variation on top of it. I used the planar UV just to get color difference of light difference between the top and the bottom. And I used basically the sculpt details from there also in the texture, just to get a little more detail back that I already sculpted, because I used a lot of subsurface scattering for this, because just using it makes everything look organic, which is just the fantastic cheat that there is. And this is then the final result for one of those digits. Before I'm going to explain how I made the membrane for this, I'm quickly going to explain that indeed jitter came right when I was in production of this film. So I could immediately start using it for all the pollutants here in the water, because they attract stuff like plastic pieces in there. It was so easy just have different kinds of plastics to look to see with the same kind of shape. So I had the base color of red and just change the variation of hue, lightness, and it already made the picture already feel way richer. So starting with the membrane simulation for this, I had to figure out, okay, I have to make a giant membrane of the plants. How do I do this? Well, thankfully, Cinema has this nice little button called Cloner. You can just clone everything, and it's kind of like particles. Just scatter it all around and make it look nice. The same thing I did here for a membrane as well. And how Cinema improved my workflow for that is indeed it's so easy. The thing is, I learned afterwards, stuff like using a matrix instead of a cloner, just made the viewport way faster. That's something I learned from a different colleague who uses matrix for pretty much for everything, and just use the redshift tag to say, well, this is the geometry you want to use, and makes the viewports go way faster. That's what I'm actually using now for my current project I'm working on. So creating the membrane, started with the digit I sculpted, and playing with some displacement and noise, just to make it wave around make the movement feel natural. So I scattered everything over the plane, rotated the axes of the digits, and I used the push apart to make sure that everything is a little bit evenly spread. Also used the random to change the orientations of all the digits. And there you go. Everything is moving around because of the displacement. And you have a very natural looking membrane. Then we come to the final part of my workflow, which is compositing. And I use compositing pretty much for everything. I don't use the depth of field and redshift and stuff. I do everything in post. And for me, that was one of the important things in cinema, okay, how much can I take from compositing for this as well? Answer, a lot. Because I used a lot of, I work different ways of compositing depending on the project. Usually it's just making a beauty AUV of all the passes. Get your diffuse, your lighting, your global illumination, your reflections, and after that, you can adjust everything, add depth of field, add motion blur, add some glow, and stuff like that. But sometimes I actually like to change the lighting as well. Like some stuff like we have a mitochondria which emits light, but what if I want to make it to flicker? I'm the kind of the lazy person who was basically like, well, let's fix everything in post. Just generate everything in Cinema. No, render it out and just make it nice in Fusion. Same thing goes for flickering. You can just add the flicker in post. If the client doesn't like it, well, I don't have to re-render. Just turn the node off and it's done. That's why I work everything in post. It's just, I like to save time on rendering. If the client doesn't like the color, well, just fix it in post. Now it's done. Don't have to re-render. And Cinema for me is actually really helpful for this because it has this thing called takes. And like I know Max has some stuff for this, and it has some plugins that actually does the job as well. But Cinema actually has takes and does the job already for me. And it was so helpful for this because I had to show basically inside of the molecule, which is attracting all the pollutants, and I also had to show the outside, how the molecule actually looks like. So I had to add already 2 layers for this as well. And at one point in the beginning of the animation, we also had to see this entire field of all these molecules. So I had to make another tag of a layer of molecules which showed everything. So I already had 3 tags of takes of everything. And the redshift tag is super helpful for this because it allows you to really make some masks for everything. And that's what I'm going to show you now. We have basically the simple molecule in water. And you have an alpha channel of your simple geometry. Then you have the inside basically of what's attracting all the pollutants. So blue is actually attracting everything, and red is basically negative force. And I used basically 2 different materials on the for the geometry. One is just regular subsurface scattering, and I used a glass material just to refract the light that's actually inwards from all the balls. There you go. So what I did for also all the pollutants that are actually floating around in in the water, I added a redshift tag basically on the null that actually holds all the pollutants together. Make it a matte of that so that if I have my second take basically, I just have an alpha channel that's only showing all the balls on the inside and not showing the pollutants on the alpha channel as well. So I have full control of every specific part in my composite. And to show you all the passes that I render out, it's basically everything as you see here. You have got the fog, you got the reflections, and everything stacked together. It's subsurface, it's depth of field, it's the fog adding into it, it's the glow that I use as 2 different layers. Added some particles. I used the glow also as a magnetic force that's actually attracting all the pollutants. And I think I have to replay this because it's going quite fast. Okay, so we created the magnetic force as well for that attracts all the pollutants because that was really very important for the client. And after that, I added I let it glow. I added lens characteristics like distortions, chromatic aberration, a little bit of glow, a little bit of vignettes, and then a final grade to mix everything together with the final film. And just to show you the end result as well, here's the final film as well. So you can see how it matches everything with the live action footage as well. Because some shots actually had to match with live action as well. And combine
In the
them.
wondrous realm of nature, something extraordinary yet unseen exists all around us. One of our world's most abundant building blocks, a natural biopolymer found throughout Earth's domains, from the deepest oceans and densest forest to your own backyard. Meet Chitosan, a silent hero brimming with the potential to revolutionize entire industries. No matter its surroundings, chitosan displays qualities that make it utterly unique among molecules. To begin with, biodegradability. It is easily broken down by enzymes so common that they too are all around us. Another thing setting chitosan apart is its positive electrostatic charge. This natural positive charge is extremely useful and can, for example, be used to remove pollutants from contaminated water. Chitosan attracts and binds to negatively charged particles in the water, including a range of inorganic and organic contaminants, effectively trapping them. Chitosan's degradability also creates the downstream potential to reuse any leftover solids. This leaves us with a truly remarkable solution for safeguarding our most precious resource. But the marvels of chitosan extend far beyond water. Thanks to its third unique feature, its function as an elicitor, our hero also enjoys a special connection with the plant world. When applied anywhere on a plant, chitosan causes a cascade of desirable reactions, inducing the plant's resilience while increasing its nutrient uptake and accelerating growth. Upon first contact with a specific cell wall receptor, the plant is in effect tricked into believing it's under attack. As one of the core components that all fungi and insects are built up of, it's no wonder chitosan triggers plants to shore up their defenses so vehemently. Building upon this instinctive response, we can gain access to a whole range of more effective crop protection and plant nutrition products. From the future of agriculture and water treatment to the progression of material science, chitosan opens up a world of possibilities and has the capacity to make a real impact across the globe. At Tidal Vision, we're fully committed to the continuous evolution of chitosan science. Join us as we unlock the boundless potential of this remarkable biomolecule, harnessing the power of nature for her own preservation.
Go. So that was our presentation for today. Do you have any questions for us?
Okay, then if you have any questions later, we're here at the demo booth, so you can talk to us about the project, and we can show some project files as well if you're even more interested. And thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.